Breaking news, this just in. Automation has a new player in town. Say hello to the Automation Town podcast. But this is not about a new automation podcast. This is about a new automation and integration software. This is about Amaka. Amaka is the gold standard in accounting, integrations, and automation. This is accounting integration software, a bridge app that I like to say is similar to Zapier, but I've been corrected. It's much deeper. It's made for accountants with customized account mapping, backsync data, and breakdown by products or categories. Amaka is designed by accountants for accountants using cloud products like Xero and QuickBooks Online. Connect the systems your clients use every day in a matter of minutes. More than 35,000 small businesses around the world are automating over 1 billion transactions with the Amaka platform. Use Amaka to connect QuickBooks or Xero to e-commerce platforms, POS systems, and more. Check out their integrations with BigCommerce, Revel, Lightspeed, Shopify, Squarespace, and Vend. And be on the lookout for Amazon, eBay, Wix, and WooCommerce, which are right around the corner. Get started with their 2-minute express setup. Increase your profitability and productivity without breaking the bank. With their 100% free plan, connect one integration to your platform or pay only $13 a month for up to 10 integrations. And if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant, get your practice listed in their advisor hub and find new clients that are seeking help from professionals just like you, and get your practice listed on their directory. Visit amaka.com. Check it out. Amaka.com, AMAKA.com. Start automating today.
Scott, you look chipper this morning.
Chipper?
Yeah.
Is that
He's usually a little bit more
Grumpy?
no, relaxed.
Oh, chipper, like is wound up? Feel like
No, he's firing on all cylinders.
Oh, nice. Cool.
I have a little bit of nervous, like it's kind of like how you could relate it to stage fright. Like every time we're about to record, I always have a high amount of not anxiety, but like excitement energy, right?
Get that.
Yeah. And I can't ever get rid of that. It's always like, I want it to go well. I'm planning and then I'm thinking of everything that could go wrong, but then it kind of just, and I'm also not high. I think that's it right there.
That's it. That is it.
Absolutely. I stopped getting high before these episodes because I think they sometimes go better if I'm more focused. Yeah. They go better if I'm more focused.
Yeah,
we could talk about that too. I don't have any weed on me and I'm not going to get up because I'm tied to this microphone. So I don't plan on getting high for the next hour.
Neither do we.
No,
that wasn't part of the. I was ready to give a message of peace and hope from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's gonna be beautiful.
He did it before I did. See, Zachary called me out. He said every episode I always mention Mormon somehow in some way. Hello and welcome. We are all the sons of CPAs. Join us as we question the current state of the accounting and tax industry with the next generation of professionals leading the space. We are all the change agents in an industry fraught with money and inertia. Let's begin today's episode of the Sons of CPAs with your hosts today, Zachary Call and Scott Scarano. With a very special guest that Zachary is going to introduce.
We have Greg Kyte here.
We are blessed.
He is a self-proclaimed cartoonist, MC, CPE presenter, stand-up comedian, comptroller,
yes. Yep.
podcast host, fry sauce connoisseur.
Yes, that's it.
He is the master of all things CPE comedy. Greg Kyte.
Right on. So glad to be here. Scott, I love that intro. That very much sounded like we were at a re-education camp and you were like, we are all sons of CPAs and we shall all hail the master son of CPA. And this is our life and there will be nothing better than this. Conform.
So I had a vision when I wrote this. I was very high and it was late at night. I was about to fall asleep and I couldn't sleep. It was like burning in my head. And I think in my vision, you were saying it in the, and it was like the disciples, right?
Had a very Mao Zedong kind of feel to it. So
we're stuck with it now too. Like I've pretty much got it memerized.
I say it's perfect. Don't change a thing, man.
I don't think it can be changed at this point. Yeah.
Was your father a CPA?
No, my dad was a mechanical engineer. His big claim, do you know about Pendleton Wool? My dad was the plant manager at the original Pendleton Woolen mill in Pendleton, Oregon. They had three plants: Pendleton, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington. He ran the original plant in Pendleton, Oregon, which I'll tell you what, Pendleton, Oregon, it's a thriving metropolis. A great place to spend your summer is in Pendleton, Oregon, man.
So is it Sons of Wool or Sons of Mills?
It's it would be son. I like a son of a wool-monger. That's really good. That sounds like an insult. Son of a wool-monger. That's like what they'd say. Like if we were in like the Dark Ages, they'd be like, "That's son of a wool."
You're on your own boat on that one. Yeah, if we're in the Dark Ages, you're pillaging and roaming in your own wool boat there.
Yeah, but that said, I mean, if we're talking like lineage, my grandfather on my mom's side, he was a financial forecaster at Boeing. So that's not a CPA, but that's in the same ballpark.
What about Interesting. We had a financial forecaster from Boeing on 2 weeks ago, or the episode I released 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
nice. You had my
grandfather, not your grandfather. This was Fatty Hawatma from Clockwork, but yeah, he was a forecaster at Boeing.
Yeah,
so interesting that came up because that's legitimately. So I can't ignore the comedy, the cartoonist, and the MC. I know that we're supposed to be talking about accounting here. I know that we're supposed to be talking about everything relevant to this podcast. But God, all I want to talk about is the comedy stuff and the cartoonist. So I guess we're going to have to thread the needle there. But first, we should at least very much ask, how were you as a child? Were you a handful to your parents?
No, I was. No. My brother was.
Really?
Yeah, definitely had a demon angel situation going on. My brother.
Wait. And you were the angel?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely. I was the good kid at home. I was the good kid at school.
Were you always funny growing up? Were you like the class clown?
No. It was funny in elementary school. It's funny. My nerddom started early. I was in this gifted and talented program where they actually bused us to like this magnet school in the district. So they took all the nerdiest kids from the entire school district and packed us all in one school. And I remember, like, as a kid, there was a bunch of other kids in my elementary school that, like, we were the same kind. We were all the same kids in the same class all through elementary school. And there were kids I thought were hysterical. And I was always like, I wish I was as funny as Mark was. And I just was like, but I'm not, dang it. And then even in high school.
Smart. Yeah.
Well, no, I wasn't even it was a gifted. I was like middle of the road. I was like maybe kind of funny every now and then. And I was like just mediocre amongst these gifted children. And then in high school, I didn't consider myself particularly funny in high school, but I do know, talking to friends now, they're like, oh, you were very funny. So it was puberty.
So it's all relative, right? It's all relative. You go into the world of accounting and CPAs, and you're the funniest in the room, right?
Which isn't. That's not. The
bar is low with us.
That's not wrong. So I started my professional life not as an accountant, but as a middle school math teacher. And it was during that I started doing stand-up. And then I switched from, I made a midlife career change from middle school math to CPA. And I'd already been doing stand-up. I started at that firm. It was Squire and Company down in Utah County. He knows Squire and Company. Yeah. And as a brand new hire, I just went up to somebody. I was like, hey, what would you think if I did like 3 to 7 minutes of stand-up at the beginning of staff meetings every week? And I was like, I'll base it all off the Journal of Accountancy. And I 100% did. I did, like,
really?
Yeah, it was all.
That's how it started.
That's how, well, No, and then it was weird because on the one hand, you're not getting huge laughs at staff meeting at 9 a.m. at your accounting firm. But then I also had one of the partners pull me aside once and go, I mean, it was a partner of the firm. He's like, the only reason I come to these meetings is because of you. And so I was at least getting through to one person with it. But
don't take this the wrong way. But when I think of a middle school math teacher, I think of a white shirt, a black tie, glasses, and a bald head. I do just in my mind. Like I've had math teachers in middle school, and that's just don't take it the wrong way. But you look like a middle school math teacher today.
You know what? It follows me around.
Now I know your sleeves are rolled up, but usually it's a button-up shirt that is cut sleeves, right? The short sleeve. Yeah.
Oh no, you're thinking of Mormon missionary. That's 100% Mormon missionary look. Is the short sleeve
missionaries for the church?
That's what did I say? Didn't I? I was a funny teacher.
LDS.
You were it depends on the class because at my middle school it was kind of cool. They tried to be very equitable because at most schools, like the teacher who's been there the longest, they get like the higher level classes, which are usually better behaved and it's easier. At our school, they always made sure everybody had like some high level classes. They had some like remedial classes and everything in between. And what I found is that it was only like with my top students in my top class that I could actually be funny, because anywhere else I'd like crack a joke and they'd be like, "Oh, the teacher said a joke, it's recess," and then they'd screw around like you couldn't. They were just gone for the rest of the time. So I was pretty stern, like with all my classes except like that one class every year, and I would like legit try out bits on that. So I remember one time I had this idea that if I ever had, like, for some reason I ever lost both of my legs, like in a landmine kind of situation, that I would install at my home. I wouldn't have like ramps or wheelchairs. I just install a series of monkey bars around my house. And I did this act out where I was like swinging monkey bar to monkey bar and like answer the door, swing, go, "Hey, how you doing? What's up?"
That's a real stoic way of thinking, though. You know, what's the worst that could happen? I lose my legs, but you got a backup plan.
I did. Well, and the real thing was if I was at a
but if you lost your arms, that would suck. Would really suck.
It'd be that would, yeah. But no legs and monkey bars. I like, this was back when Oprah was still on. I was like, that's a ticket to get on Oprah.
She's not on anymore.
So I had a backup. the legs didn't happen.
Backup to the backup, yeah.
And how were you gonna lose your legs? Like, what was the fear in your mind?
It was just like, if this happened, I don't know how I can't remember how I got
like some phobia.
No. It's just trying to.
I get it. I have those thoughts all the time. Absolutely all the time. Yeah,
it's risk management is what it was. And with that, I was like, I'm in the wrong field with my clearly innate proclivity for risk management. I need to get out and teach in middle school math and find something else, not just another career where I'm better suited for, but also a better career where the dream of home ownership might actually become a reality. Those two things.
Good segue though. So growing up, did you fancy yourself an accountant, a math, or actually a comedian? Like, at what point did you decide to actually take a path? Right? Like, was that the end game, to be a teacher at first?
Well, okay. You asked earlier, we totally ignored you, what my mom did.
Yeah.
My mom was a pharmacist. So she sold drugs on a corner of my hometown in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. Legally, but she was selling drugs on a corner.
Okay. And we've talked about this in the past. I've sold drugs as well. So I have more relation to your mom than your father. Yeah.
Right. Well, hey,
you have to serve. We have a really good bit here that me and Zachary are working on, because he was serving at the same time I was serving, but I was serving for the devil. He was serving for the higher power.
Yeah. The Church of Jesus. Because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. At some point, we're going to get to a message of hope and peace during this episode. I'm hoping. But here's the thing. So my mom, not only was she a pharmacist, she owned her own pharmacy. And I started working for her when I was 14 years old, because it was a partnership. She was like the pharmacy side. The other partners were supposed to be like the retail end side of all the other crap that They sell in a drugstore for whatever reason. And as many partnerships do, like within a year, they hated each other, So there was
it sounds like me and Ackerman. That sounds like me and Ackerman already. After about a year, we hate each other. This is why Zachary's on. Yeah.
So, but this was, I mean, it was so toxic. This is what the day I started working for my mom. I was 14 years old. I think it was summertime, and I was just hanging out at the drugstore because there wasn't any school. And her partners were like, screw you, screw this place, we're out of here. They gave the middle finger. They walked out the store. My mom was like, hey, so looks like you work here now. So there's the cash register. Get going. And I started working there, but very quickly. So I was 14 when I started working there. I think I was 16 when she actually started having me do the books for her. And this was back in the 80s. So I was working on a 13 column analysis pad, writing in stuff with a pencil. Totaling my columns this way and making sure they add together down here, doing all that. So that, and the crazy thing is I very much enjoyed the book.
You were a teenager in the 80s?
I was a teenager in the 80s.
Wow. I wasn't even born yet. Actually, I was born.
On my drive up here, I was listening to Men at Work. That's my, that and the Police. So that's where I
the Police
came from. So
I'm a child of the 80s. I'll be honest. Like I was born.
Yeah. Well, it's, you can find, there's good stuff.
What was the biggest takeaway for you from working for your mom at that small business?
Don't start a small business. That was like legit.
Really?
Just because it was her experience was so rough, because part of what happened in that first year, that first toxic year with these partners, is because, again, my mom, her responsibilities were to run the pharmacy. And it's one of those things in that kind of establishment. It's definitely an 80-20 kind of thing. 80% of the revenue of the entire business comes from the pharmacy. And that all the other crap that you see at a CVS, they love to sell that, and it's great, but that's not the meat and potatoes of the store. So my mom was supposed to be just in charge of making the pharmacy side run right. Her other partners were supposed to do very important things like remit payroll taxes and things like this that they did not do. And so as soon as they walked away, she starts getting these notices from the IRS, and her business just tanked because of, and there was a bunch of other just legal things in terms of how stuff was tied up with those partners.
I think if she would have had a CPA that could guide her through the process the whole way.
Yeah.
She might have made a go at it.
She may well have, yeah, because that screwed her. And then getting caught up on that stuff because the money, and I don't think that they embezzled the money, but I think it was just reinvested in bad things that weren't financially sound.
Like if you do find something out, that's a good topic for your new podcast.
That would be, but it's too. I mean, at this point, that stuff's so buried under years. But anyway, so my mom spent 10 years of her life, and then she couldn't afford to hire another pharmacist. So now, and legally a drugstore can't be open without a pharmacist on site. And so to make ends meet, she's working 12-hour days, Monday through Friday, 10 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday. And that's her life for 10 years. And at the end, and she, and her whole thing is she really, for many reasons, didn't want to declare bankruptcy with this pharmacy. And that was her entire goal, was just like, I want to be able to feed my children and not declare bankruptcy. And after 10 years, she didn't declare bankruptcy. She just closed. And a lot of times back right before when she closed her store, a lot of times what would happen is you'd sell your records to, it's kind of similar to, I think, what some CPA firms do. If you're just closing, you sell your book of business. They could do that with pharmacies too. But right when she was closing up, that was when that like chain pharmacies became the norm. And they're like, no, we're going to get that business. So she just shut the door.
Like we're lagging in the CPA world, in the firm world, but at some point there's going to be chain. We've got H&R Blocks, we've got the pilots of the world, cropping up. I think we're going to start seeing that too. It's already a trend that's kind of starting on the ground level. But as it relates to firm ownership too, I think it's hard. it's hard to have a small business without a support system and without any kind of outside help in the for the finance function, for the back office. So you as a child were steered away from something like that. I think, Zachary, in the opposite end, you were pulled right in. Like Zachary, you grew up, your dad has owned a firm. You're now, almost running the firm, or you're part of the firm, and it didn't steer you away. So it's an interesting contrast too, because you could be a pharmacist right now, Greg, if it was a different experience.
I couldn't. People ask me that all the time. Yeah. When I was working, they're like, "So are you?" Because I started college when I was working there too, and they're like, "So you're studying to be a pharmacist?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. There's not." And it was one of those weird things where they're like, "Dude, your mom's standing right there. Don't say it like that." I'm like,
what was it about the books then? Like, because is that what hooked you, or was there anything about that stuck with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing the books. And again, it was the precision of what you were doing. There's a right answer.
Yeah.
You don't, there's like at the end of whatever the tasks were, and I can't even remember what I was doing, reconciling something on these huge spreadsheets. But A, you knew that there was a right answer. B, you knew that as long as you spent enough time that you were going to get it done right. Because if again, we're talking these 13 column analysis pads, and if the numbers don't match where they're supposed to match, you got to go back and do it again. And I think just the intense left brain side of working with that quantity of numbers, and again, with being absolutely sure that you were doing it right, that stuff clicked with me a lot.
Well, so in all seriousness though, there is no right answers with comedy. Comedy is so subjective, and comedy is so open to interpretation. And there is absolutely no right answers. And with enough time, it could still be done wrong, right? Like with enough time of doing comedy, it could still be done wrong. So how do you balance both of those?
Well, the funny thing is there is a right answer, and the right answer is, did people laugh? And then, which is why, for me, comedy has been it's this thing it's strangely inescapable for me, because if I go to a club and if I have a fantastic show, I'm killing it, then I go, that was the best thing ever. I got to come back here and I got to do that again. If I go to a club and I have a crappy show and I feel really bad about, it's just meh, or, whatever happened and it didn't connect, I go, oh my gosh, I have to go back there and do it again. Cause I feel the only thing that can wash away the shame and just the bad juju that I got from that set is going back and having a great set. And so one way or another, so there is a right answer. It's like, did I get that immediate feedback? So
sounds like a gambler justifying their nights at the card table, right? You have a really good night, you got to go back. You have a bad night, you got to go back.
Get back out. That's
when you're reconciling the books, if you weren't happy with it, you would undo the reconciliation.
I would pull that 13 column, I'd light it on fire, whoosh, and then I'd go, we're doing it again. Got to get this right.
So laughter is a universal language too. Laughter is,
and as is math. I mean, that's, and as is accounting. I mean, you can't get a culture that doesn't have accounting. You can't get a culture that doesn't do math. Can't get a culture that doesn't laugh, except Russia.
Except the Mormons.
It's members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And listen, they laugh their asses off. Okay,
they do, don't they? Zachary does stand up every Sunday, right? I'm sure you make them laugh every time you go up on Sunday. Is it every Sunday?
Yeah, they laugh. The ones that are paying attention, that are like.
I usually draw the correlation whenever I bring this up. It is, Zachary, you are in front of an audience, and you're performing as much as Greg is, at the club at night, right? To a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It's a little different.
I'd say it's different, but not completely unrelated.
You have to command their attention. You can't bore them to tears.
You try to. I don't know. Do you? See, that's the thing, is that like in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they have family wards, and the family wards, there's all these kids that are just going bonkers out of their mind because they're so bored. The only way to tame them is to a constant like feeding of Cheerios to these Honey Nut, preferably to these children. And so you got distracted kids, and then they're distracting your parents. So if you're up on stage doing your talk, you're like going, there's 4 people listening to me
The best is like when one of those little kids just starts running around.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The church chapel.
Yeah.
It's tons of fun.
I remember
that's actually fun to watch.
I remember being in a meeting, in a sacrament meeting once, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden this little kid is like barrel rolling like under the pews, and he goes right here, like between my view and the one in front of me, and he just stops and looks up at me. I don't know him, he doesn't know me, and then he just goes back to barrel rolling.
My aunt's wedding. Like I was always somebody like that. So it's funny the way you describe yourself as a child too, because it was and I'm not trying to steer the conversation in any direction. I was just thinking, like, I always did shit for attention. I always like I have a story of like my son just always repeats because I told him this once, but they gave everybody chopsticks in school, and only thing I could think of when they handed it to me was to stand on top of my desk and yell, "Pick your nose," and put them in my nose. And like in another situation, my aunt is getting married and I'm supposed to be carrying the rings, and all I did was want to run around and I threw them up in the air. I threw the rings in the air. I don't know why I did that shit. Like these are the kind of things I can't even explain to you, but I think
this is why Scott has a podcast. It's still for attention. We need to resolve these issues, Scott.
Can we resolve this by the end of this episode? Because I've yet to resolve it. Yeah.
I say you're taking lemons and making lemonade, and this podcast is your tasty lemonade. So keep it up, man.
But to finish off this,
I don't drink sugars anymore, so I'm going to go with lime flavored sparkling water.
All right, life gave you
my water and turning it into lime flavor, and I'm putting the carbon in it. Yeah.
Life gave you lemons, and you made Crystal Light.
You had a mom who was full of integrity. That's what I got.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And accountants have to have high integrity.
Yeah,
and so I think you did learn that from your mom.
Yeah, yeah, integrity and work ethic. I mean,
Greg, you've got that, and I just met you for the first time, like in person in Denver, and we're all going out and hanging out and partying. I'm gonna have to go to bed early. I'm not going out. I'm not drinking. I'm gonna
really,
yeah. And you were MC, and you did a beautiful job. But that's work ethic and that's integrity, because Gusto's paying you to be there, so you're not going to fuck around on their dime and go out and party. And I thought that was admirable. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, that's, and also, yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's one of those things too, that even folds back into what I said about doing stand-up comedy, where it's like, if you don't do well, it's hard to get that feeling the feeling of failure off of you. So there's a lot driving me to make sure, like at Gusto, I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was saying, that it was funny, that I had setups for who's coming up next and funny things to talk about.
You have a very short memory when you're performing. And very short memory.
Incredibly short. And that's one of the things too, is that even other conferences that I had emceed, they didn't have a teleprompter. These guys, Gusto had a teleprompter, but even with that, they needed all that stuff like weeks before the day of. So I was like, okay, I just gotta, like, between the different speakers, I gotta sit there going, okay, what are the announcements I need to say? What are the funny things I need to say? What's the name of the guy coming up? Is it Scott?
It's scientific.
I want to make sure I don't forget his name. So, but fortunately, so I was up super late that night making sure I had all that stuff prepared. But it was mostly because I didn't want to, because I hate failing at stuff like that, because it's so hard to. And
I'm sure you've got stories of times you were extra prepared and you think everything's going to go well, and it's a failure. Like that's not scientific. That's just
But you're right. I mean, but also, I mean, you were saying, there's the precision of accounting, there's the versus the art of comedy. And I will say that's one of the things that I found is true about me. And we all know about being an introvert and an extrovert. There's this concept, and I would think I was late to the party with this. Everybody else seems to know it, and I took forever. But the ambivert, have you heard about this? Where you're like both?
Ooh.
So, and I'm like, I feel like I'm a polar ambivert, where on the one hand, I need to be alone in my office with the door locked and a spreadsheet open. I need that in my life, but I also need this, the creative side, which for me is
and you want them siloed.
Yeah.
Want them to happen.
Oh, I'm not.
Well,
I'm
I do.
1,000% with you. I've never heard of this before, and I just wrote it down.
Extreme on both sides.
Yeah, extreme on both sides. Get me on stage in front of a bunch of people, or doing something creative, or get me alone in a room by myself doing something, very not academic but mathematical. And both of those feet, probably if I didn't have, if something happened and I lost either of those, I think I'd miss it. So
yeah, that's 1,000% going to be the title of this episode, the Ambivert.
Nice.
I think that's beautiful. So
Right.
talk about the art. So this came up last week. We had Ron Baker on, and the art of business is something I have written down on my notes, because this is just the place that I do these things, these podcasts in this room, and I have the art of business on there. And we were talking about the difference between, the scientificness of how accountants want to approach pricing, or just how they want to approach the business in general, versus the actual art of business and the art of, the art of what we do. There's an essence to human interactions that can't be quantified. I tried to sound smart there. I don't know if that landed.
You did totally that. There's an essence that cannot be quantified. That's the art of human interaction.
Yeah.
Like it. That was good.
Yeah. So
nailed it.
So let's kind of show your journey to where you are now.
CPA
we've listed out, and the
CPA stardom.
Yeah. So when did you decide you were going to become a CPA?
It was in 2006. I think 2006. And I was well established as a teacher, but like I said, I didn't really enjoy the job. It's so funny.
After 9/11.
It was after that. Yeah, I taught school on September 11th, 2001, when that happened. That was a weird day to teach. So, and
I don't know where I draw the correlation of 2006 and after 9/11. I just want
it was quite a bit after 9/11
because of 9/11. Yeah,
it's like so I started teaching in December of 1999. So I didn't start at the beginning of the school year. I started in December that year. So when the Twin Towers fell, I was not even quite 2 years into my teaching career at that point. But you hear people who become teachers who are like, oh, I was an accountant and all I was doing was crunching numbers and I didn't feel like I was doing anything positive for the world. And I was like, no more of this. So I went back to school. I became a teacher. I was the exact opposite, where I go, you know what? These kids kind of drive me up the wall. Parents are even worse. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm going to be an accountant where I know what I'm doing. And actually, I mean, it goes back to the precision of what we do. One of the things that drove me nuts as a teacher is you don't know if you effectively taught somebody what you were supposed to teach them. You could give them a test and you go, probably did, but you never know for sure if they just studied the right things, if they guessed well, if they cheated off their neighbor. You never knew if you really got that information into that brain. And that was one of the things that drove me nuts. So, and again, so I didn't really like the job, and the pay was not good. So I was like, well, and when I went to college, like I said, I did bookkeeping for my mom. When I went to college, I was like, well, I'm great at math and I enjoyed bookkeeping. Which one should I do? Should I be a math major or should I be an accounting major? And I chose math major. And I after a few years of being a teacher, I was like, I chose wrong. Let's go back and do the other one. And so I went back and did the other one.
As a human, it's tough. And I like to say, I've said this before on the podcast, Ackerman argues with me, but I say it's about money until it's not. You know, to a degree, you figured that out. And, you know, I use Blake as an example of that too. Like, it's just different people, follow maybe their passion or follow what they think they should be doing and realize, shit, I got to make money to live. I want to actually live a normal life. Yeah. So I think because I'm half Jewish, I never experienced that because it was always about money with me. It's never not about money. Are you drawing a diagram here?
I am.
Is this like Maslow's hierarchy?
No.
The quadrants?
Yeah. This is what I had, and I'm not sure if this is going to translate. This is my 2x2 quadrant right here, where you can have it.
Fun,
you got to
not fun.
It's your job. Fun or not fun? Is there money or is there no money? And
Okay,
what quadrant
okay.
what quadrant are you in? Teaching for me was in the not fun, no money quadrant. So it's like,
Yeah. I like this.
there's no reason to be here. And the idea, like if it's fun, but there's no money, that's you doing your passion.
That's stand up.
That's stand up for me. That's exactly what that is for me. And if it's money and not fun, you're a soulless banker on Wall Street. But
Yes.
the goal of life is to get to the fun and money part. And I feel like I've been able to get there. I wasn't there.
Let's segue into, I think you guys are making some money on this new podcast that you have, OMF, if we're going to use acronyms.
Yeah.
Oh My Fraud.
Yep.
You know, you guys, you got a pretty successful business partnership with somebody like Blake, because he's got his mind on the money. He's an eighth Jewish, so there's that there. Like he knows how to pull the deals in. You guys got some good sponsors. Avalaire's got 6 episodes.
And I'm going to very explicitly distance myself from the anti-Semitism. So
I'm sorry, I'm not being anti-Semitic at all. Like I'm actually like this is me. Like I really am half Jewish, and so I guess I'm allowed to say that. But
you're right. Yeah. But here's the cool thing. So and it goes back to what you were saying is like the silos, having the comedy and the accounting in the two silos, where I feel like what I've been able to do, and you know, this is even the art of business, is you got to have a niche. Like whatever you got to specialize in something, or else you're not going to make any money at all. And for me, it ended up being, okay, I can be funny and I'm an accountant. So and then you find that Venn diagram of humor and accounting, and there's like less than 12 other people who are in that spot. And then all of a sudden, like what you do, back to what you were saying, Scott, it's like, it's a very low bar too. So if you're in that very, very tiny space, whatever you do, people who are in the industry are very interested in it. So that's why we can have that's why
it gives you a lot of space to freedom. If you're kind of pioneering something, so to speak.
Yeah. So it was 5 years ago, I think mostly just out of interest and even a little bit of mental health, I started doing cartoons just for me, just to exercise that creative side of me. And I did a couple.
I love this story. Yeah.
Myself, right?
I do those all myself, all by hand. I haven't even, I'm like intentionally ultra lo-fi on the, like low tech lo-fi on those. But I did a few of them, and then I was like going, I wonder if anybody would buy these for me. So I sent them off to Tell 'em Hood at Accounting Today.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, hey, what would you think about buying these for me and running them on a tech accounting day? And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, hard pass from Accounting Today. So then I go to Caleb Newquist at Going Concern. I go, hey, what, you want to buy this for me and run them on Going Concern? And Caleb's like, yeah, no, not at all. And then I go, well, it was worth the try. And then a couple of weeks later, Caleb, like he contacts me. He's like, hey, I thought about it some more. And yeah, we want to run it. And so all of a sudden, I'm not a great artist. I've got friends who are fantastic.
You're the Gary Larson of accounting, right?
What's that?
The Gary Larson or the Charles Schultz? Gary Larson's Far Side, right?
Yeah, I think I could say I'm the Gary Larson of accounting, although he's got some accounting cartoons that are actually very, very good.
What about the Scott Adams, right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Adams of accounting, and then that ties us to Dilbert, which is Zachary's cover on the podcast. His figure on the podcast is the Dilbert. Yeah.
Nice. So but again, it's one of those things where it's like, if you've got this niche and I've got this thing where it's like, oh, I just, threw something against the wall and it stuck because I'm in this really sticky niche where I've got people who are far more talented than me that I know that are like, if you could sell cartoons like on a regular basis, I kind of have a whenever you get one, we'll pay you for it kind of thing. They would lose their minds about that. And me, I'm just like, I do comedy, I'm an accounting too. Do this.
Do you have a process for these cartoons? Are you producing a lot of them, or do you have just a stockpile?
I have a stockpile there because I do them by hand. They're pretty labor intensive, but again, I get something out of that because it's, it's kind of like
you're alone in your room drawing. Like that's part of your, like, you can be in front of a group and as an MC, but you could also be alone in a room doing this as well.
Exactly. And I love it. And I kind of relate it. You know how a lot of people like the adult coloring books kind of thing? That's been a big thing in the last decade or so. I think it's the same kind of thing I get from that, where it's just like I just get to sit and draw, and it's nice. It's nice to read. But in terms of a process of coming up with the ideas, a lot, it's just like with stand-up, where out in my car, I usually have just a drawing pad in my book bag that I just keep with me. And if inspiration hits, I bust it out and I do a little doodle. And the nice thing is that you don't need too many. I have a backlog of ideas that I need to get to make cartoons. So the answer is both of what you said. I keep a collection of ideas that I need to get back around to turn them into cartoons. But I also do have, I think I've got probably close to 100 cartoons that I published so far, that, it's just like with the Far Side. I had a Far Side desk calendar last year, and I swear I've seen I have the complete works of Gary Larson at home. I swear I've seen every single cartoon that has, but it was maybe every other day that it was like, oh, I remember this one, and the other ones go, never seen this one. So I think it's the same thing with mine, where I publish one and people are like, I don't know if this is old or if it's new, but I liked it. Well,
in context, you usually, the ones that stick with you are the ones that really would resonate in your, in your point of view or your life. Like, oh, wow, I love this because of that. Or sometimes you don't even draw the connection. And then another one later in life, you have a different perspective. And then you connect with that one too, for a different reason. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, that goes with the draw of inspiration. As you think of something that really resonates with you, and it may not be the right time to release it or to do it, but you've got the idea there. And then later you build on that. And then it becomes like with these cartoons. You've also told me the story where the Christmas cards, right? Like, that's a great story as well. Do you care to, share that one too? That's
and the Christmas card story is even getting better. I think it's better. It's even gotten better than when I told it to you. So, I did these cartoons. And most and pretty much all of them got published through Go and Concern.
Exposure drafts is what
exposure you call drafts. Them, right? You can go. I got my Instagram set up for that, so you can go to @exposure drafts and see, maybe not the entire catalog, but it's getting close to the entire catalog that I put on there. So I've been, and then out of the blue, I get this.
Do you do that daily on Instagram, or do you do it?
I shoot for twice a week to put something out on Instagram twice a week. And then out of the blue, this was over a year, maybe about a year and a half ago, I get this email from a lady going, hey, I want to talk to you about licensing one of your cartoons. And I'm like going, oh, finally, a textbook publisher realized that these would be great in an accounting textbook. But I don't know if that's what. So I emailed her back going, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. What are you, what do you plan on using it for? And she was like, well, I run a little firm, and I was thinking about taking it and changing it into a Christmas card and giving it to my staff and maybe a few of my clients. And then I'm going, you should have just done it. Why didn't you? Yeah. But I'm like going, okay, for that sort of thing, I typically charge $100 or so, just to be like, okay, it's, so I got it. So, but I did, I charged her $100 to license and I drafted up some bogus little thing of going, I, Greg Kyte, do hereby authorize so-and-so to, with the whatever, and set. But then I was like, oh, that's a great idea to make Christmas, because I've got a handful of Christmas themed cartoons that I've done, and they've gotten good response when I've put them out there. So I was like, I'm gonna start doing Christmas cards with my. So then I'm like, I got to start doing more of these and posting them on social media more. So I was really diligent in 2020 about posting those. Just getting more awareness of my cartoons back out there. And I even found a dude named, his first name is Rubik, his last name is unpronounceable. He's got a company called Rubik Creative, and he already was doing like cards. He has this whole accounting greeting cards. And I found him and I was like, hey, I've been wanting to do that. And he's like, cool, I can make your stuff into cards. I'm like, going, cool, because I don't know how to do that. And he's like, yeah, I'll take care of all the back end stuff. You just give me your stuff and I'll make. And I go, that's amazing.
Awesome.
This is so easy. And I was like, and it turned out I would make, after taxes, I realized I'd be making about $1 a card, but that's great because you get You get Ernst and Young buying 100,000 cards. I just paid $100,000, right? Cha-ching. So I'm like going, let's do this, pedal to the metal. And listen, by the end of 2020, I sold 9 cards through this guy's site.
Round up, you made $10.
$10 after taxes. And then what? But I think you got the first part of that story. It was like, oh, that's a great idea. Do cards. Not a good idea, actually, after all. But because I was so consistent posting stuff online, I've now had 7 different commission cartoons where like companies have come to me and say, hey, we want to sponsor a cartoon through you to blast out on social media and for you to make for us. And I'll tell you, that has been incredibly lucrative and a lot of fun to do. And actually, I've got one coming up. Like I sold 2 cartoons to Divi. You know, Divi?
Oh yeah.
Do you know Divi?
I do know Divi. They actually, as you were talking, I was thinking we need a sponsor for this episode. Maybe Divi would be a good one. I have no idea how the connection came and you brought them up, but here we go. Sponsor alert.
It's the secret, the law of attraction. It's the universe bringing Divi to you, like they did to me. They came out of the blue, like, hey, we think we want you to do a couple cartoons. I go, shut up, you're in Draper, which is just halfway between Zach and I. And they're like, cool, here, let us throw it. We have a bunch of money in our budget left over from 2020. We gotta get rid of it. Here, you take all of it. And I'm like, okay. And then I actually have a meeting with them on Thursday.
They're a cool company and they're doing lots of great stuff. So you should try to get them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, they actually, I was just in Santa Barbara and they sponsored a dinner and we didn't even mention them during the dinner. They didn't even come or anything, but they paid for all of our dinner. And it was just a bunch of accountants getting together and they bought us dinner. I thought that was beautiful.
That's awesome.
It occurred to me, and I get distracted pretty quickly. And then during the story, I was just thinking, oh wow, they're good for a next sponsor. And I was going to write it down, and I wrote it down on this piece of paper. But this is notes for your episode. Sorry, totally irrelevant, but also pretty fucking cool that you brought them up. That I had no idea that was coming. Yeah,
and now it's a race because I'm meeting with them on Thursday to talk about ideas for the cartoons.
It's not a race. I'm
100% going to pitch them to sponsor Oh My Fraud. So
why not sponsor another podcast that's on the lower end of the spectrum? Like,
not lower end of the thing.
Yeah,
and it's a great segue. Should we talk about podcast history with Greg Kyte?
The Thrival. Yeah. Was that your first? Yeah. Sorry.
What was your very first podcast in the accounting industry that you were on?
It was the Thrivecast with Jason.
Yeah, what year? Had to have been like 2010,
2011.
2011.
We started our first episode. So it was a monthly podcast. Our first episode dropped in July of 2011. I met Jason in January of 2011. And the weird thing was too about from my side of that podcast is that I had been thinking, man, it'd be cool to get like a funny business podcast going. So I actually pitched. And so at that time I was doing improv comedy as well as stand-up comedy. And I pitched the idea to one of my improv buddies who I knew was well-read in business books. So I like sent him a message through Facebook Messenger. It was like, hey, I got this idea. I think it'd be really cool if we did a business podcast together. What do you think? And literally the next day, Jason calls me. It's like, hey, I want to do this business podcast. I want you on it because you're funny.
The universe aligns, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so I was like, yes, absolutely. And the funny thing was, the guy that I messaged, he never responded to that message ever. He clearly was not very turned on by the idea. So,
but yeah, speaking of people not responding, Tom Hood was supposed to be on at some point, and we got he never responded back either. So I thought of that one too. Yeah.
I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it, but
he didn't take up your cartoon. Sorry, I wanted to bring that up too, because when I do open up accounting today, I see cartoons, but I don't see exposure draft. I see some other guy. Yeah.
I was too edgy. That's
really?
Too edgy. That's the story of my life. Stuff I do too edgy. Like I think one of the ones I sent.
It serves you well though. That's a niche, right? That's part of that's part of your niche. I feel like that's me too. Like I intend to be edgy, and sometimes Zachary wants to censor me, but I push it out anyway. Like the title of Laurelyn's episode, Big Dick Energy. He says, don't do that. Well, guess what our most listened to episode is by far?
Big Dick Energy.
Absolutely.
Nice.
It's inappropriate, but Let's go on.
I love it. He calls me up. Did you really title the episode that? Like
the dynamics are fantastic. I'm like, I need to explicitly separate myself from the anti-Semitism. And he's like, I find that incredibly inappropriate. Okay, next question. We're just covering our bases to make sure.
Oh, I love it. But it's got to be a balance too, right? That's why I have Zachary on, because if I go too far, then at least I have a sounding board to know the guest is the balance all the time. Zachary is, I think, a little too far on one end, and so it works out pretty well. And I think the contrast is like the black and white or the night and day, you know, however you want to.
One of my favorite all-time episodes of any podcast was Thrivecast. Early on, it was like 2012, I'm guessing, maybe 2011. I don't know, somewhere in that range. I tried to find it, I couldn't find it, but you and Jason were talking about niches, and perfecting those, and he was taking experiences from his creative agent, accounting firm that he has. But it's like one of the classics. You can still go back and listen to that. Like I listened to it like a year ago or so, and it's still fantastic.
Nice, cool.
It's really impressive. So there's some good stuff in some of those old podcasts.
Yeah, we hammered on niches a lot in that. In the, it's kind of like, personal finance gurus. They have two drums. It's like make a budget, get out of debt. That's the entire story. And I feel like it wasn't quite that simple with Thrival, or with the business of accounting. But the biggest thing is you got to find a niche. If you haven't done that, you're not. That's like the starting point for all of it. And if you haven't found it, and even funny enough, when I was out in Greenville one time for one of the Jason does the annual Deeper Weekend conference out in Greenville, South Carolina, and I was out there once, and it's a small crew. We're all kind of doing everything. So I was out there to MC, and I'm helping set up the venue too. And so we're in this, Jason finds these really cool venues, and we're in there setting up. And this dude who runs a jewelry shop across the street from the venue, he just wanders in going, hey, what's going on over here? It looks like you guys are getting ready for something cool. And I go, yeah, it's an accounting conference. He goes, accountants, I need a good one. And I go, oh my gosh, and Jason was on a ladder right next to me, hanging stuff up on the ceiling. I go, this guy right here, he is the premier accountant in all of Greenville, South Carolina. A good one is this guy. And Jason's like, no, not at all. I don't do jewelry stores. I do creative businesses. And he's like, knock it off. And I'm like, I was trying to help. And I did not.
Well, that's
help.
a good point too. Like, so because that happens a lot with accountants. Like, I know this great accountant, and all of a sudden you become the accountant for everybody. Oh, my daughter needs her taxes done. Let me bring them to you, who works with minors, like I'm an accountant for minors. I don't do minors, right? I actually do the guys who wear hard hats, not
in the girls, full minors. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Funny story. That's this guy for me.
Yeah, that is.
And because I don't do,
Zachary will take it all on.
I'm a comptroller. I do corporate accounting. That's my thing. That's all I do. I have a basic knowledge of anything apart from that. I don't have the time or capacity to do taxes beyond the ones that I already do, which is very few. And so when people come to me, they go, I really need accounting help, or I really need tax help. Do you know somebody? I go, oh, Zach Call. He's amazing. So he's my funnel for everybody. It's like,
I did do your tax return.
You did do my tax return.
I did do your tax
after H&R Block.
It was it was a test. It was like, let's see. You were writing an article.
Yeah, for Jason. Yeah, a series of articles. I mystery shopped H&R Block just to see what the experience was like and what the price was like, and to see if they were good at taxes or not. They were not good. They totally screwed up my taxes. And
I think we got you some more money back.
Yeah, a lot more money back. Yeah. And
interesting. Yeah. I'd like to read that article.
It was, and the other thing was, I made Zach feel horrible about how much he was charging his clients because H&R Block was, because you were like,
more?
They were charging like almost $700.
You know the title of Zachary's episode on this podcast?
What's that?
Do you do $125 tax returns?
Yeah, I have a problem. I need to raise rates, and I have been trying.
Yeah,
really.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. He's not too nice. My goal here is not to shame Zach.
It's not shame.
My goal here is to shame everybody that H&R Block prices are higher than what you're charging the bottom.
Or they're higher than what you might think, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. But you don't know unless you know. And I went in and was like, oh wow, that's same with I did the same thing with Liberty Tax a couple years before that, and it's pretty eye opening. But yeah, so Zach and I've seen a couple of comedians to Zach, and one of them was just not. I should have.
Your niche could be taxes for comedians, right? That's a
horrible niche.
Yeah, don't
because they make no money. They're like, what's estimated taxes, and they have no money to pay you. So
that's a good segue too, because it's like comedians can diversify, they can do a lot of things, but usually they don't do well until they break it into Hollywood, or they get a writing gig for a TV show or something like that. That's how they can kind of pay the bills. But in your experience, did you ever intend to do this to make money, or you did it for the fun? Because you are making money doing it, but in the accounting world.
And I've been doing, so here's the thing. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 20, this summer will be 20 years since I first started doing stand-up. And absolutely, when I first started it, I wanted to get on SNL.
Sure.
That it was that kind of thing of like, I want to, but that I also started it when I was in the quagmire of the wrong quadrant of my professional life. And so yeah, I always wanted to, when I started, it was very much, I'd love to see this become my thing. The difficulty with that is that whenever you pull, I went to, in 2012, I went to a comedy conference, festival. That's what they call it in comedy land, not a conference. It's a festival.
A comedy conference.
It was a comedy conference in Atlanta. And there was a buddy I knew that I'd worked with several times out here in Utah. He's a nationally touring comedian, does it full time. That's his gig. And at this comedy festival, we're waiting for a shuttle bus or a Uber or something like that to get to a venue. And we're just chatting. He goes, Greg, man, I had the best year of my life this year. I think it's finally coming together for me as a comedian. I made $32,000 this year as a comedian. And granted, this is 2012. So it was 10 years ago, but still, me doing the stuff that
adjusted for inflation right now, that was probably $100,000.
Right, exactly. But the crazy thing was all these little side hustles that I had between the podcast and this and then the emceeing and all that sort of stuff. I was like going, I almost made $32,000 this year doing it too. And you just go, so enjoying what I do and making a decent amount of money, it'd be very difficult to like flush all that down the drain and start, surfing couches to try to get a gig here and there, to scratch together a living. So at this point, not so much. But what stand-up comedy does give me is it gives me a pipe dream, because I still do lots of stuff, and you never know what you're going to do that's going to take off
too. So the way that I see it is, you've got what can pay the bills. You've got, I think the comptroller thing is kind of like a joke to you. Like, you still like to say that as a joke, but
yeah,
if you identify yourself as being a comedian, as being an MC, as being a cartoonist, it's not about the money. It's how you identify it, and then you can become a better one, because that's so you go to sleep at night knowing that's what I am, and you wake up the next day writing jokes, and it doesn't, you're not doing it for the, the stardom or the huge like pipe dream, right? Well, I mean, the pipe dream is still there, and if it happens, it's still part of who you are, and you're not selling yourself on the street. You're not serving fast food, right? Or you're not you're not flipping burgers.
Right. Well, here's how I look at it. Well, and it goes back to what you said. It's about the money till it's not. And the fortunate thing is I've got this great gig as my day job where I can just bail out without telling anybody that I'm heading, I'm driving 45 minutes away to spend who knows how long.
Design your life. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what they're paying me for. I have that kind of freedom. I have that day job, which is fantastic. It pays the bills. It gives me health insurance. They've allowed me to invest in the company. So I've got, a future in terms of that stuff.
You've got a title. Comptroller.
I've got a title that I get to make up myself, which is why it's comptroller.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got that, but then I've got this other thing. It's Nassim Taleb is an author, wrote a book called The Black Swan. You probably never heard about it, probably never read it. It's a horrible book to read through. Like it's great, but it's written like it's like very much train of thought writing where it's like, okay, I get to the point. It's almost like reading his journal or something like that. But one of the things that stuck out to me from that very meandering book is because he's a Wall Street guy, and he talked about this thing that he calls the barbell strategy, which is also a very bad misnomer for what he's talking about. But it's a way for investing your money where he says you got two extreme. I mean, again, we're talking two extremes, kind of like the introvert extrovert thing. He says when you're investing your money, invest 85% of it in the most secure way that you possibly can. Like something that's short of a zombie apocalypse, you're going to be making a return, even if it's not you're not going to knock anybody's socks off. Just save with 85% of your investable money. And then he said the other 15%, you're taking all the long shots. You're investing in anything that might blow up and become, you're looking for the next Apple with that other 15%. And it's like, you're probably going to lose, you're going into that going, I'm probably going to lose all this money, but hopefully one will hit so big that it makes up for all the 14% that I lost. I'll have that 1% that hits big enough to make up for that 14%. And then you've reallocated with that 15%. It's called the barbell strategy. I feel like I do that with my professional life, where I've got 85% of my work is this day job that's very stable, pays the bills. And that's where I don't have to worry. That gives me the freedom to do what you're saying, Scott, and pursue this other stuff out of love and curiosity. And
if it hits, that's your barbell. That's the other side of your barbell.
Exactly.
And that can overproduce the other one. And you got your passion on that side too. And I love that analogy because I read Anti-Fragile. That was the book that I read of his, and I'm sure that's not huge either. But he's in The Black Swan. I've definitely studied what his thoughts are on that, and that's what I wanted to do. I think he has an investment firm as well, and you can invest in Black Swan funds, and that's just like the ones that could eventually hit. I don't know. So that's 15%. Yeah. But that analogy is I've used that a lot in other episodes, at least for drawing it back to my own experiences. I'm very safe when it comes to anything money. I got this from The Psychology of Money. That book was another one that imprinted on me. Like I have to be very, very safe when it comes to money. And that's part of my anti-Semitism blood. I'm a half blood, right? I'm a Muggle or one of those. So I have to be very safe on that. So in my life, I take huge risks as long as I'm financially secure.
Right.
And meaning like I've sold drugs. I've done all kinds of crazy things, but I'm actually I find a balance when it comes to the money, but balance anything else. I don't know. So sorry. But drawing back to your point of, I think you can go to sleep at night knowing the work that you do isn't draining you. You probably get a lot of fulfillment out of that, and it makes sense. It's logical. You could spend 85% of your time doing it, or make sure that 85% of your income is coming from that. So it's how we spend our time, and also where am I going with this point here? That's because I'm trying to drive a conclusion, because we're going to have to hop off too. But I think that's a beautiful way to end it as far as that analogy of the barbell. So I can only aspire to one day see you be like with the heavy lifting show. What am I thinking of where the guy's got the barbell and the tiger and he's in a circus, right? Like
the freak show, the strongman freak show.
So your next comedian show will be that, right? You won't be wearing the suit, the Mormon outfit. You'll be wearing the Speedo. You'll have your tiger, and you'll be doing your thing, and that might be 100% of you at that point.
Right. Yeah.
And that's when the pipe dream becomes the reality. So that would be the really interesting discussion, is after it gets there, then what's your identity, right? Like that's where you've got people who have made it big, and they've got everything that they have hoped for. And some of them turn to the dark side after that. And then like Robin Williams, and so that's there's a lot of sad stories in the ones that are very prolific and very talented. I think you're one of those. I mean, you're very talented. I don't know about the prolificy, but you've been really at this for a while. So I'd be interested to see once you get there, what happens. I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's
since we're wrapping up here, Scott, we have to talk about two things really quickly.
First
of all, Oh My Fraud. What got you back into the podcast?
Yeah. Well, a couple. So with Jason, I love Jason. He's like a brother to me. And the crazy thing is, every month when we'd get together to do our podcast, it seriously felt like a play date that like our moms had set for each other. And we would, so it was a blast. It was tons of fun. I chose to leave the podcast, not because I was disappointed with it at all, but I felt like we'd done it. Like 10 years, 120 podcasts. Well, actually it was after 8.5 years. I'm like, I think we did that. I gave my 18 months notice to Jason that I was like, I think we need to wrap this up at 10 years. That feels right. And the other thing was, you just get too busy. I've got so many side things. Like you were saying, you brought up my fry sauce.
The next thing,
my fry sauce company. Okay. So I've got all these things that I'm trying to do. And eventually you go, okay, I don't have enough time. I need to stop doing certain things. So I was like, okay, this podcast has been a blast. We conquered it. It's done. I did it. I think it's time to go find other cool things to do now. And so I left the podcast, and I think it was even in that 18 months, Caleb Newquist contacted me. It was like, hey man, well, it didn't contact me. We worked together regularly for the webinars. And he was like, hey, just wanted to, what would you think if we started a fraud podcast? I'm going, dude, I'm just quitting a podcast to not do podcasts. And I was like, it sounds like a great idea, but I'm going to pass on that unless you tell me how we're going to like conquer the world. How are we going to conquer the world through this podcast? And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought that was my very nice way of saying, leave me alone. I don't want to do a podcast. And then a few months later, comes back to me and goes, okay, I figured out how this podcast is going to change the world. Blake Oliver's got a way for people to earn continuing education by listening to podcasts. True crime podcasts are the biggest thing on the planet right now. We're going to have a true crime podcast.
Not just true crime. The top two genres is true crime and comedy. Podcast. That is by far the top two that most people listen to. You guys are blending that.
Right. Similar. And there's another true crime podcast that I listen to that's kind of like, I want to be that, but with fraud. And it's one called My Favorite Murder. And it's a couple of comedians that just tell stories about murder. And so he was like, okay, let's, and the idea that people can earn the CPE by doing it, I go, okay, that's a whole new thing. And the freedom that we have. And that's one of the things we've pissed off people because our language isn't so clean on the podcast, but that's part of why I'm doing it too. Well, and the funny thing is, it's not like the webinars, because Caleb and I do fraud webinars where we have through CPA Academy, we got a sponsor, but it's a different kind of sponsorship. Because with these podcasts, we're able to create a podcast, create our product, and go out and say, do you want to sponsor this? We created this with all the freedom that we wanted to have. Do you want in on this? Instead of going, hey, do you want a podcast? Okay, we're going to do it. Tell us what we need to do to make you happy. It's the other way around. Right. And having that kind of freedom is the other thing that drew me to the podcast. So
that's awesome.
And it's another pipe dream, like you were saying. That thing, some people hit it big with podcasts, and that becomes their whole.
Oh, I know too well.
Talking to the choir.
Any listeners who hasn't checked out Oh My Fraud, you should go check it out. They have their first episode out. By the time this airs, they'll
probably have 5 episodes, 10 episodes out at that point.
Yeah, we're our publication, our editorial calendars every 2 weeks. We're dropping a new podcast.
And then what else do you have a website for your fry sauce company? Tell us about with fry sauce. So here's from my view. Let me tell you. Well,
it's always about food with Zachary, so we got to bring it back.
I'm in Denver last week, and I'm at a diner. It's called Sam's Number 3.
I love that place.
It's a great.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times.
They had a chili verde Mexican hamburger.
Oh, okay, nice.
A hamburger wrapped with refried beans, wrapped in tortilla, smothered with chili sauce.
Yeah.
and cheese.
That sounds amazing.
And it came with a side of fries. And the first question I asked them is, do you have some fry sauce? Because they told me no.
Right.
And I forgot that I wasn't in Utah.
Right.
And they didn't have fry sauce. So fry sauce is a big deal to us.
It is. It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's transferred places. You go up to Idaho, you can get some fry sauce.
Yeah.
Arizona.
Wyoming. I was in Wyoming. They had
there you go.
They had some. They were very proud of the fry sauce they had in
Only
no-name
Wyoming,
Wyoming.
in North Carolina, because we just got crumble cookie. You know, we get a lot of hand-me-downs from you guys.
Yeah. So fry sauce. That was okay. So here's what happened. I love fry sauce. My girlfriend loves fry sauce. My kids love fry sauce. We're just in my kitchen. We made tater tots or something like that, and it's like we gotta, we can't have tater tots without some fry sauce. So we whip up, and here's, I'm gonna give away the secret recipe for fry sauce. 2 parts mayonnaise, 1 part ketchup. That's like a toddler can make the product that I'm wanting.
It's like Russian dressing, right?
It's like that, but not nasty.
It's not 2 parts.
So I think it was my girlfriend who was making up, just mixing the 2 ingredients together. And somebody says fry sauce. That's Utah's treasure. And then it was like all of us had this light bulb going. That's an amazing name for a fry sauce company. And we're like, oh, did we just start a fry sauce company? So we did. And our whole idea is to do like gift, like to make the product that literally anyone can make, but to package it in like gift quality bottles where you could you could take it home from Utah as a souvenir.
You'd sell it in the airport.
You'd sell it in the airport. Right. Yeah. You could send it. I mean, that's another thing. If you got if you got somebody who's serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they're in North Carolina and they're homesick, you don't want to go send them a cheap ass plastic bottle of fry sauce. You want to send them a nice ass glass bottle of fancy souvenir quality glassware fry sauce to go, we miss you, and home is still here. That's what you need to do. So we want to do with fry sauce what Starbucks did with just a meager cup of coffee. It's still a meager cup of coffee, but it's not, because it's Starbucks. That's what we're trying to do.
For anybody who
got to make it addictive somehow, and that's where the fries come in, right? Like that's the addictiveness of it. That's where people will pay the big bucks. So.
Yeah, and there's times
in there and you're gold.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I'm at the point where it's hard for me to have tater tots or French fries without fry sauce, because like ketchup just is teasing me at this point.
Well, it's the contrast of the sweet and the I don't know how to describe mayonnaise, but that's
mayonnaise.
It makes it creamier. It makes it smoother than just the sweetness of ketchup. I always mix my mayonnaise with mustard, but that's just me. I don't like the sweet, so I what's that called when you mix is it mayo stirred or mustard anise?
Dijonnaise. They sell that.
Dijonnaise, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. I got a call that I'm late for.
Okay.
That's
but yes, utfrysauce.com. Which is we sell so far. We don't have any product except T-shirts and a sweet blog, a sweet foodie blog. But eventually we're actually gonna get our
and then tell me what you're doing with your girlfriend.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. We're finally
gonna have these passion projects that eventually pop. Right.
Exactly.
It's the 15%.
And if they don't, they're still passions though.
And exactly. And if it wasn't fun, we'd walk away from it. But we're having a blast. Not making a product yet.
That's how I feel about life.
And for the listeners who own
away from
accounting firms or who are working in accounting firms, take a 15% risk in your firm and start doing some things that are on the edge, that are unique, and one of them might blow up. They might be that fry sauce for you.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, both of you, for being on. I think our technical difficulties earlier on was my fault, because I got nothing coming out of my headphones. I'm listening to you guys from this. That's why we have the echo. It wasn't even your fault to begin with. I don't know what happened here. It's never happened like that. Yeah. So
you keep turning up the volume. It sounds a little muffled.
Man. I feel bad. I think my mic is working. But honestly, I don't even know. I think that I don't even have my mic on. So I'm a little embarrassed, but awesome. Excited. to have you on one day again in the future. We can actually have a microphone that time.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Zachary.
Thank you guys. That was fun. Wait, who's gonna come out?
Scott was supposed to come out.
Oh, you're supposed to come
out of the closet?
That was the context I was picking up.
That's all. That's all I heard. Yeah, the way that
big episode for you, man.
Sorry. So Zachary, what context were you?
You were going to come out.
Fly out. I think he meant fly out. He's meant fly out.
I didn't know it. Isn't that the same thing?
He's so innocent. The innocence of this boy.
Just, you're late. I thought you were going to come out on this episode. Oh, wait.
The innocence. Yeah. Well,
our knees are touching too while he says it.
I thought that was a Freudian slip there. I thought you guys were going to come out. Yeah.
Hey,
That's what this was about. You're dressed up. You're ready. You guys are going to the courthouse right after. This is
immediately
predetermined.
Yep.
Awesome.
It's going to happen. Well, let me tell you.
I go to where the people are.
So I got a bit of a segue. Yeah.
He's trying to make it accessible.
I'm trying to make it accessible.
Approachable.
I'm not trying to be that jerk.
I'm trying to put up walls and say, hey, you can only be cool enough to be in the religion that's in the state that I am.
Greg knows a lot about
I know a lot about the church.
And therefore, when he says that, he's really making a jab at members
it's of the Church definitely
of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
It's a very subtle jab.
So, but you have to know the context in which we're talking, which none of our listeners are going to.
Right. It seems like so, exactly.
If we get in context, I'll cut this out and bring it to the forefront or the back end. I'll do some masterful editing and make it sound in context, and then cut this part out because we're talking about that, and that's a little too meta. And you did it before I did. I appreciate that.
I
Greg.
tried to
Thank
touch
you.
the part.
You did. I have a
Do you call it LDS? LDS? Is that what you?
It's
the church. Listen, it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or nothing, man.
Yeah.
Don't abbreviate that shit. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And
You're talking to somebody who abbreviated it a few days ago to me. I was just with Zachary, and I think he used that acronym.
In 2018, the prophet, seer, and revelator of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Russell M. Nelson, came to he came out at the a general conference, and he said that
he came out at the
he came out. No, not like that, but you picked up.
That would really bring it in context. That
he can't like
the needle on all of it.
And what he said was, he said that that any abbreviations of the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Saints is not acceptable. Whether that's calling it more, which is why no longer, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. You've heard of this. Well-established singing enterprise. They're no longer the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. They're now the choir at Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, I think is what they're called. The Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, which is hard to say. The Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, because Mormon's not okay. You can't say that. So,
I think that's what
they're
we should
trying to get away from the
yeah, it's kind of a go-to thing.
Yeah, and
so if I came out, then you could have given me a tour.
A tour,
yes, and Greg would be able to tell all the Utah jokes because he knows all, and people get a hoot at his shows.
So hoot.
So, and I thought you were.
And I can give you the facts of what we believe.
He can straighten it out, and he can say when I'm being a dick just so subtly that no one except him really picks up on this guy's being a dick right now.
Yeah. Zachary picks up on mine all the time. I mean, sometimes I try to play it off, and he's a sharp-witted humorist. Zachary, you would do very good satire. That's your brand of comedy.
Maybe I'll start.
Yeah.